Hey peeps, so today we are going to be doing like a full breakdown and discussion on the Nameless one, a tarot and oracle deck by Zia Hunt. So I'm going to include the link in the description box for this deck. I was not sent this deck. I don't get any money if you click on the link. It's just to make everyone's lives easier because it is an indie deck. And if you're interested in purchasing, the link is right there for you. So let's just talk about a few things right off the bat. I did not share my unboxing of this, and I've been a little bit reticent to talk about this deck because it is a very pricey indie deck. And I know that there is, I shouldn't say is, that there are a lot of opinions in the tarot community about consumerism, etc. This is not a video about that. In my opinion, if you are able to purchase this deck, it is well worth the investment. You definitely get your money's worth. So I just want to say that right off the bat so I don't have to address it again in the video, but just to warn you, it is an investment deck. If you buy the deck and the Grimoire, you're looking at an investment over $100 for the deck plus shipping. So just want to be straight up honest about that. I did save up for this deck after having a conversation with a friend of mine. My friend had originally gifted me the Children of Letha Tarot. I think that's the name of it, which was an earlier deck of Zia's, and we both loved it. And then she had supported the creation process of this deck, and so shared with me her thoughts and that she thought that it might be up my alley. And she was 100% right. So I saved up and I did choose to make the investment in this deck, and it is, in my opinion, 1000% worth it. So I purchased the deck, I feel like it was like end of summer 22. But I don't know, there's some, if you go back and look at the videos, if you're really interested in the timeline there, there's definitely a video with me talking about it as one of my favorites. So I've had the deck for a while, but I knew when I first purchased her after, from the conversation with my friend, and once I had unboxed her, that I was looking at a very serious deck that would require a lot of study on my part before I could read with her. This is definitely not the type of deck that you just pull right out of the box and read, like you would a typical Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So this deck, and I'm going to go into the particulars in a moment, but there's 78 tarot cards, and then there are an additional, I feel like it's like 20 cards or something like that, on top of the Rider-Waite-Smith style tarot cards. So it's important to know that you are dealing with an oracle deck that includes tarot within it. I have not found that the deck reads like a traditional tarot deck. It's much more of an oracle deck that contains tarot within it. And each card, every single card, has a sigil that you can use for magical and ritual purposes if you so choose. So the deck is a multitasker. It's a tarot deck, it's an oracle deck, and it's a deck that you can use in magic and ritual practice. And you can work with the sigils intimately if you desire to. So it's definitely a lot of bang for your buck. And let's talk about the physical aspects of the deck before I go into how I've been working with her and recommendations, etc. So I believe if you purchase just the deck, it comes in this beautiful packaging here. It says the Nameless one, a tarot and oracle deck on the side, and it does come with a guidebook. So if you are not up to the investment of the Grimoire, then you're still going to get a guidebook with the deck. As you can see, it has color representations of each card, just lost the word there. And then it has upright reverse meanings with just the sigil affirmation. So it has a lot less information than the Grimoire, but you still have a really beautiful jumping off point, and I don't think it's in any way disappointing. Okay, so you're going to get that. The inside of the box is this beautiful black, and then it says, every time this sigil is seen, More power to the nameless glean. By the might of land, wind, flame, and sea, excuse me, to powers untold, I hold the key. As I have willed, so shall it be. So you have a little incantation there as well. And then it has this really beautiful tie. And then let's get into the deck itself. Sorry, but I have to do this because this is my life. I don't like it untied. That bothers my brain. Okay, it's a little bit about me. Let's just have a sip of tea really quick. Side note, we're in the middle of a snowstorm that became an ice storm. There's no school and Vincent is at home today. So if you do hear him in the background playing with some of his friends, that's what you're hearing. It's called real life. Okay. I'm trying not to like get too excited, but here is the deck. This is the backing, and this is like the main sigil of the nameless one. For comparison, here is the Le Vampire Oracle. So you have like a little bit more lengthwise and a little bit thinner widthwise, but very similar to this. And you can see that you have a large amount of cards to work with. So it's even for me, and I have larger hands, and I know a lot of you will say to me how difficult certain decks are to shuffle based on your hand size. I have larger hands and I cannot shuffle this like a normal deck. I do want to give one recommendation here because I was having a discussion with a viewer about the True Black Tarot and how they found that their cardstock rapidly started to disintegrate on them. And mine has not. And this is a similar cardstock to True Black. It's a little shinier. It's not quite as velvety as True Black, but it is a similar completely black deck, and it does have a higher quality cardstock. I just want to give a recommendation for you guys that if you do purchase a deck like this that has that darker cardstock, excuse me, don't shuffle it like you would a normal deck, please. Please don't do that. Just shuffle it like this when it comes to the shuffling point. It's going to give you a lot more longevity out of your cardstock. I've had my True Black since I lived in Tuftonboro, which was like 2019, 2020, I think. And my deck still looks exactly the same as when that deck was gifted to me. So please just know, if you struggle with that, don't shuffle it. Don't shuffle it like you would a typical card deck. Okay, so my cardstock is absolutely beautiful. I've had no issues with the Nameless one, but I do treat her very gently, and I only shuffle like this. Okay, and as you can see, even for me, it's difficult to shuffle. So if you're a big shuffler when it comes to your card pulls, you're gonna have to adapt to this deck. I think no matter what size your hands are, it is a hefty deck. It's also, she's big. Mama's big. Like she's a big deck. So you're going to have to be gentle and take care. And that's actually part of what I've found to be really enjoyable about the process of working with her, is that I have to slow down across the board. Like you can't rush a pull with this deck. You can't rush a spread. You got to spend time with it, and even down to the shuffling. So it becomes a very meditative practice working with this deck. And I, for one, consider that a plus, because I have other decks on days when I just need a quickie. But when I want to luxuriate and take my time and just completely give myself over to a deck, this is the perfect deck for this. So cardstock quality is sumptuous. It's delicious. You can see it's nice and thick. It's this gorgeous black. It's not quite matte, but it's also not shiny. It's a beautiful in-between, which I find really enjoyable. And I'm trying to get through brass tacks because I want to start gushing, but I want to make sure I get through brass tacks. So that's the cardstock. I talked about the card size. Is this deck a tarot deck or an oracle deck? Like I said, I consider it an oracle deck with tarot within it. And I definitely am learning and working with the guidebook like I was a brand new student. Because even within her Rider-Waite-Smith meanings, Zia gives us these really beautiful descriptions of card symbolism and color, and the choices that she made when it came to the artwork for each card that really give you food for thought. They really give you something new to look at when it comes to tarot. And so I am looking at this as an oracle deck that contains tarot within it, and I'm learning the entire structure of it before I read for anyone besides myself. That's just a personal ethical thing for me. I don't believe in just throwing down a deck that I haven't spent time getting to know for a client, especially because there's an exchange of money when people do purchase a reading with me. So I have not read for anyone besides myself with her yet, and I don't intend to do that until I finish working with the deck. So as I was originally saying, I purchased the deck, I think end of summer 22, and I knew it was gonna be on the shelf until I had time to give to her. And I started working with her for daily draws in December. It's now the end of January, and so I've been doing daily draws with her every day for 2 months. The fascinating thing, sorry guys, we're like borderline cold again here in the house. The fascinating thing is that within 2 months of daily draws, I've only drawn repeaters twice. That very rarely ever happens with me with a deck. You guys share your thoughts with me in the comments of how often that happens with you with a deck. But when I'm getting to know it in daily draws, I tend to draw repeaters. You know, I think it's a good way that our guides let us know when we're working on something, right? But with this deck, I've only drawn repeaters twice so far. So that's been really fascinating. I'm going to show you the images in a second. Don't worry, guys. But I just want to talk about this piece first. Due to the daily pull and reading the Grimoire guidebook meaning for each pull, I spend about 30 to 45 minutes with the deck every day in the morning. So I get up around 5 and I have 30 to 45 minutes where I pull and I read and I journal. And I just want to give a recommendation here. If you are someone who likes to journal as you're getting to know a deck so you can develop your own language with the deck, I have found very helpful to, and I've gone through, like I slammed through a journal this size within 2 months working with this deck. But what I have found helpful is, so like you'll see, and I'll show you the Grimoire in a second, to write down the titles. And then there's the little about section, which I will journal on what comes up for me based on alternate card titles. And then she has guidebook meanings in the Grimoire, which I'll write out what I feel like I resonate with for the card. And then I'll journal based on all of the symbolism, color choices, and animal choices that she made for each card. And I found that very helpful to create a system within my journal where I can really remember the guidebook meanings and also associate it with what's come up for me intuitively. So I found that remarkably helpful with this. But as I said, I've had 2 straight months now, daily draws with this deck, 30 to 45 minutes with the Grimoire. So I'm going to talk about I think I'll talk about the Grimoire and then I'll show you some of the artwork. The Grimoire is fucking amazing. I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to swear on YouTube anymore. I gotta work on that. So it comes in this beautiful big box. Let me just give you an example of, so you can compare. Like, this is the Kali Oracle. This is how big the Grimoire is. The cover, the front cover of the Grimoire, it looks like this. It's absolutely fucking stunning. This book is very, very heavy. So if you are someone that has issues with lifting, just be aware that this is hefty. And so when you get into the Grimoire itself, there's an entire section at the beginning that discusses tarot and oracle and sigils and sigil magic. So if you're new to those practices and you want a nice starter, this is a beautiful place to start. If you're new in your magical practice and you still want to work with this deck, but you're not sure, this deck's going to give you a nice jumping off point. There's also gorgeous illustrations within it. So there's a whole intro, and then she goes right into the guidebook meanings, and she discusses the like traditional associations, etc. So again, if you're new to tarot, you have a nice jumping off point there. There is a full page reproduction of the image. And then we have a page remember what I was saying with the journal, that has alternate card titles, affirmations, associated numbers, elements, astrology, animals, plants, crystals, and colors. There's your incantation there if you want to use that. Then she has an overview, upright meanings, reversed. Then she discusses the sigil with you if you want to work with the sigil. And then she has this is for one card, okay? Then she has pages and pages on the symbolism of the choices that were made in the artwork, and how she has used it for the card, and how you can use it in your personal connection with the card as well. And in addition, if you're drawing your daily draw in the morning, it's a nice way to kind of go through the day and notice when you see these symbols, these colors and aspects of the card show up in your daily life. And then there's a little kind of summing up of the card and the magic here. And this is for the entire deck. So that's the guidebook meaning part. Then in the back of the deck, she has, sorry guys, my throat. She has a ton of card spreads for you to work with. Like, you get everything here. You don't need another book besides this. Then she has all kinds of correspondences. She shares about working with the sigils and, you know, how she created them. But then she also has representations of every single sigil in the back, so that you can draw them and use the affirmation for your magical practice if you want to. Again, you could be totally new to working with sigils, and you're going to be just fine with this book. You can obviously purchase other books if you feel so inclined, but you don't need to. And there's also a section on crystal correspondences and various spells you can work with. There's just really great appendices to this grimoire, much like Tolkien's world when you read the Lord of the Rings series, right? So this grimoire is 1,000% worth the money. I love this grimoire. It's like reconnecting me to the basics of my practice, and it's absolutely so informative. It's exhaustively informative, and I mean that in a good way when it comes to working with the cards. This is especially helpful for the oracle section of the deck, because the oracle section of the deck is definitely, for me, where I have to spend the most time acquainting myself with the card images and really spending time with the imagery itself. So I love the fact that it's all black, there's no borders, and the color tones are soft. They give me pastel vibes. I mean, pastel's the art medium, not the color choice. They feel like oil pastels on this beautiful, like, dark background, and it's really gorgeous. So the sigils are here, as you can see, and you think like, oh, it's not an overwhelming lot of things going on in the card imagery. But when you get into the grimoire, you start to unpack every single little brush stroke and piece of this deck. And you start to see that there's actually quite a lot going on as far as symbolism goes. But Zia's also managed to give a very clean look to the card, so it doesn't feel overwhelmed with imagery that you're gonna have to like force your way through to figure out all the different parts. And I love that. I think she found the perfect balance with that in this deck. Now, Zia uses reversals, and I do use reversals with this deck. It is necessary, in my opinion, because the guidebook meanings shift a great deal based on the reversals. And also, I just had this feeling, much like Tarot of Mystical Moments, when I first opened her up, that I was going to have to use reversals with her. And so I do use reversals. I found it to be very helpful, very eye-opening, really important. So let's talk about the feel of the deck. She's very, very, very witchy. I kind of hate using that phrase now because I feel like everybody says witchy, but she's very mystical and she's very occult. and very, very grounded in animal symbolism. So if you have any kind of background in that, or if you feel drawn to animal symbolism on your spiritual path, you're going to love this deck. She's like, if I were to embody her, it would be very fae, but a seer, a fae seer. Like, she feels like a fae seer to me. That's the type of deck that she is. Very related to air and earth, and very much a quiet deck, but with endless, infinite depth. Infinite depth this deck has, but she's quiet, so you have to sit with her. You can't just, you know, fling her open and expect that you're going to get a life-changing pull. You have to sit and spend time with her. Now, I love her for daily draws. When it comes to spreads, I've been trying to really take my time because the deck is so big. This is the Lovers, guys. Because I'm like fascinated by her choice there in the Lovers. Because the cards, wow, words today. We are out of Mercury in retrograde, Racine. Because the cards are so large, you need space. And also it's the type of spread that I like to leave out overnight, sit with, come back to, journal, kind of look at it, walk away from it, sit with it again. This is the Death card. It's a deck that requires you to go slow. And because there's no numbers and there's no names on the cards, even as you're getting to know the deck, even for a seasoned Rider-Waite-Smith reader like myself, I've really had to sit with taking my time, even just to find the card in the guidebook. And that's been actually really cool because it slows me down. It makes me bring intention and awareness and attention to the deck itself. So, oh my God, this deck though, she's like this quiet, still well that you go to and you sit with and you take a journey with. That's the type of energy she is. She's very, so far for me, and again, I'm only using her personally until I've made it through every card in the deck as far as reading the guidebook and feeling very connected to the deck. So far, she's been very, I feel like she approaches me like, yes, you know this is true, but what about this? Like, she offers an additional perspective. And she kind of holds you accountable, but in a very loving way. Like, I feel like I'm taking a journey with her. Like, even just to come to her is a journey. And then to sit with her and listen to her wisdom. A lot is said in very few words, even though the grimoire is quite extensive. But as far as like when I'm intuitively connecting with her, even though, you know, all of that is there and we do the research and we put that into our mind. Then when we come to work with the deck, it's intuitive, and it's a marriage of the knowledge that we took in about the deck and marrying that to our inner compass and in personal intuitive understanding, right? So when it comes to actually working with her, she says a lot to me in very few words, and she asks a lot of questions. And so it's very much a medicine deck from my standpoint, because it's about coming to the well, to have the understanding, and then you've got to go back and make the trek home and take it out into the world. So it's got very much that kind of a feel to it. It's a very, very deep deck, but it is very much requiring you to show up, or it's just going to be a beautiful collection of art in your deck collection if you purchase her and end up not quite feeling very drawn to working with her. Okay, it's a very big deck. Again, you have the 78 cards, and then I think that there are 20 additional cards. Let me check on that. Yes, so I'm just double checking the site to double check myself here. There's 100 fully illustrated cards with an additional 8 cards based off custom sigils commissioned and voted on by Kickstarter backing. So there's the 22 majors, 56 minors, an additional 22 oracle cards of my own design, making it 108 cards total. So it's a big deck. There's a lot to work through here and to sit with. But I have to say, I in no way feel like Zia phoned in those oracle cards. There's one card called the Student of the Moon, and that's actually been one of my repeaters. And oh my God, just reading the Grimoire and sitting with the card brought me to tears of how impactful that card is in a deck, and the meaning of it when you draw that card, whether for yourself or if you're me, thinking ahead to when I will be working with it with clients. Wow, just the oracle cards are not phoned in. They're not just additional cards to get you to purchase. They are very well thought out and lovingly crafted. So I love this deck. I think you can tell I'm really, really in like a long-term relationship with this deck. Like, it's not my boyfriend deck like White Owl. This is, I mean, it's White Owl serves her purpose, but this deck is much more of a study with her, spend time with her. It's like sitting in front of a druid, right? And every single thing counts and matters in that exchange. And that's how it feels to me in working with this deck. So I cannot recommend this deck highly enough. That being said, I got to be really honest. I don't think it's a deck for everyone. Not if you're going to get the most out of it. I think you have to be in a place where you want to take your time with the deck. So if you're not feeling drawn to doing that type of work, you're probably not going to feel the level of connection that those of us who purchase the deck and are in that mood to work with a deck that deeply have experienced with it. So I would just say, either just know when you purchase it, if you're not in the mood to do that type of work, like I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that when I first purchased it, just give it time. And then when you are in the mood, have the space and energy, really just give yourself over to the relationship that you can build with this deck. And then I think you're going to feel like you get your money's worth. Excuse me. And you know, we'll be able to understand why those of us who are absolutely in love with this deck, the experience that we are having. So I would just offer you that caveat when it comes to working with this deck. As I said, I do really feel like you should at least read that mini guidebook with this deck, but you know, as you're getting to know the deck and before you jump into doing full readings with it. Of course, that's always up to each of us what feels appropriate. But that has been my experience of working with the deck, is really devoting the 30 to 45 minutes a day to get to know her. And I completely feel she's worth the investment if you're called to work with her. Some things to consider as you're sitting with purchasing this deck. Do I have the time and energy to devote to getting to know the deck? Do I want to do that? Am I drawn to the imagery? Am I drawn to animal symbolism? And am I okay with working with a larger, heavier weight deck that is going to require care and attention in shuffling and will require more space to lay out a spread? I would say just be aware of that, because you are making an investment here. You know, this isn't like a throwaway purchase. And then the other thing I would say is, yes, it is a pricier investment deck, but I would rather pay for one of these than buy 6 cheaper Hay House quick throw out, you know, I mean, throw out, I mean like throw it out there and sell it quick, kind of mass market decks. I would rather buy one of these than 6 cheaper knockoff decks that I'm not going to use in 5 years. So to me, like, that's what I sat with when it came to making the investment, and I adjusted in my budget accordingly for it. I think it was well worth the money. Zia gives you a lot of bang for your buck. So I don't think you're going to feel like you didn't get your money's worth when you purchase this deck, unless you're not drawn to the type of work that she requires in order to get to know her. As I said, she's like a still well that you find in the center of a forest that you've got to sit with. But if you sit there and spend that time, she's going to give you awarenesses and understandings of yourself that will blow your mind, and also really allow you to feel very connected to your guides and your tribe. this is an amazing deck for that. Like, I cannot recommend it enough for that. If you're looking for a deck to really build your spiritual practice with, as opposed to divination, you know, if you're looking for a deck that's going to help you in self-awareness, self-care, growth spiritually, deepening of your practice, this is the deck for you. A note on sigils. I'm not a big sigil magician. It's just not a part of my witchcraft practice, so I did not purchase this for the sigils. That being said, I love the recommendations that Zia gives for why you might choose to invoke a sigil, work with the sigil in your magical practice. And I think she gives you a good footing to get started with that in a healthy and safe way. So if you are someone who loves sigils, this is a great deck for the sigils on the card, so you can use that for your visualization and materialization, manifestation part of your practice when it comes to the magical piece. And it's also clearly drawn out so that if you're someone who likes to draw your sigils yourself, you have that option too. So there's a lot of really beautiful ways you can use the sigils in this deck, and I think Zia sets you up very well for it. I don't personally work with sigils a great deal. I have 2 sigils outside of symbols that I use that I work with in my personal practice. So other than that, I don't use them for magical workings. But if you do, I think you've got a great deck here for that. As I said, I highly recommend this deck. I am like deeply in love with her. We're totally exclusive right now. Tarot Vampire is probably a little bit jelly. But no, I really, really love this deck. I do think it's worth the investment. Yes, it is an investment, but I do think that it's worth it. It's really, really beautiful deck. It's very special. It's very unique. It's lovingly crafted. I mean, Zia has a fan in me for life after this deck. I really enjoyed the Children of Letha, but this deck has just taken it to a whole new level, in my opinion. So these are my thoughts on the Nameless one, Tarot and Oracle deck. Hope you find this helpful as you're considering purchasing or working with the deck. And as always, it's just nice to spend some time with you guys. I am sending you so much love and many blessings, and I will see you in the next video.